Hello, everybody. My name is Mr. Rader, and in this lesson for students, we'll examine the auto insurance case study for Casey, and we'll examine the benefits, costs, and trade-offs that are involved with liability and comprehensive car insurance as it applies to Casey after they graduate from economics high school and get ready for their transition to Stony Brook University. So in this lesson, the first thing that your teacher will likely have you do is read through the scenario and the dilemma in the auto insurance case study and write a response in the text box here. We'll also examine the case study momentarily. And in this introduction piece, your teacher will refer you back to what you learned the previous day, day 22 in Unit 1 of Economics, where you've already been introduced to the concepts of basic liability and comprehensive auto insurance. And we'll try to consider the type of policy that would make the most sense given the fact that Casey is a new driver and is under the age of 18 years old. So, for example, in day 22, the resource of drivers involved in fatal crashes gives us some very clear statistical information that illustrates that younger people in general, in particular, people from the ages of 15 to 20 and 21 to 24, tend to have the highest rates of fatalities within auto accidents, and they tend to also to have a very large, relatively large in relation to the population itself in terms of percentages that are involved in fatal crashes. And it's one of the reasons why auto insurance is more expensive for younger drivers than it is for older drivers. So, in the case study itself, what we want to consider is how do we help Casey work their way through their dilemma here? And in particular, we want to look at what we learned about with budgeting and with wealth management to really help Casey think through what their expenses are going to be and what they need to do in order to be able to afford to operate a car. So in the dilemma, Frankie helps Casey find a used car. They end up finding a used car for $3,000. And after buying the car, Casey has $1,500 in which to allocate for various car related expenses. And this could include things such as your auto insurance. So we get a comprehensive or basic liability, oil for the car, windshield wiper fluid, brake fluid, tire pressure gauge, windshield wipers, the need to replace a battery. Really think of it as a emergency expense account that you'd want to set up specifically for the car to make sure that we can properly maintain it. And in terms of the task, we have to explain how identifying a good auto insurance policy is essentially an economics problem where we evaluate the opportunity cost between our various decisions, really considering our scarce resources. We're going to identify a specific recommendation. Your teacher may have you present that recommendation in different formats. So, for example, with my own students this year, one of the things that I'm suggesting for them to do is to actually create a brief video using Flipgrid to actually explain their recommendation to Casey. You could also use a podcast format that I do discuss in a different video in the Participation in Government series in terms of how to create podcasts. And you can also do it through a simple written exercise where you could explain to Casey what would be the best possible insurance for them. You'll want to include at least 2 texts from the annotated bibliography. We'll talk momentarily about how you can divvy up the text with people in your class or the people that you know who are taking the class at your school so that you can include relevant statistics and facts to support the decision as to whether or not Casey should get a comprehensive auto insurance policy or a basic liability, right? And our financial limitations really is going to be the scarce resource in this particular case study. So the goal is to incorporate as many of these terms as possible, and that's where the materials in the annotated bibliography become particularly useful. And while all the articles here are useful, just some that I commented on. So this article here speaks directly to statistics that can be used for the insurance policy. And this source breaks down the costs of auto insurance by company, by coverage type, and various circumstances. So they'll include breakdowns of what it looks like for a driver who is convicted of a DWI, a driver who is under the age of 20 years old, and also by their vehicle type. And then in the last article here, we see very succinct arguments for and against basic liability and for and against comprehensive coverage. So working our way through our Google slide, in the independent part of the lesson, depending on how your class is structured, how many students are in your class, and how your teacher decides to group you, whether you're doing breakout rooms if you're in a remote setting or if you're in person, in terms of just thinking about how to kind of set up the groups. The goal really should be to read one or two articles on your own, create a shared Google Doc, and essentially crowdsource the acquired knowledge that you're all gaining by reading these sources together so that you can come up with a really good recommendation for Casey and their auto insurance. And we want to really consider the kinds of steps that Casey can take to reduce their cost of insurance. So that's really important as well, while also balancing the fact that Casey is a young person and the auto insurance policies are really important to keep in mind in case there are accidents or other types of circumstances. And lastly, in the wrap up, your teacher will likely go through these discussion questions and will help you to consider the various challenges that Casey might find in identifying a good auto insurance policy while considering the various things to keep in mind as a young person with a limited or scarce budget. All right, so that'll do it for this video. I look forward to the next video in the series where we begin to look at the costs and benefits of credit card ownership. Have a great day, everybody.